Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Ethos Online. Again, this is a place where you can be, belong, and become the very best version of yourself. And so we often will use the Bible because, again, we find so much meaning and beauty there. And so we do this every single week, and we would love for you to continue walking with us in this journey. And so it's very easy to do. Just go to the descriptions below. You'll find you can hit the little subscribe button on your YouTube channel. You can hit the little bell. It lets you know anytime a new video is coming up. There's also a place where you can donate, where you can journey with us and support what we're doing with a monthly tax-deductible donation. We'd love to have you join us in this journey. We think the teachings of the Bible are so applicable and beautiful that they're worth sharing. And so, without further ado, I want to continue in this journey in this book called Genesis. And for many of my friends who have read the book of Genesis, you've read it, but you haven't really read it. Am I right? Oftentimes we take the Bible and we kind of scan it over, or we'll just kind of remember some of the stories. Even like we'll just pick up the picture books, right? Or we'll listen to whatever the pastor says. But the bigger picture here is if you were a Jewish person and you were studying this book, and again, remember, Jewish people are the authors of this book, right? So maybe studying the book like they do would be valuable. And so for them, they go verse by verse. They look in depth. Every word has texture and meaning. And so what we do in this study is we go through verse by verse and we'll take apart different words. We'll look at the deeper meanings. We'll look at the historical elements of it. We'll look at all of it. Because again, that's where the beauty is. That's where the depth is. And so we're going to journey together in this book. So last week we talked about Genesis 1 and 2. We're going to today talk about 3, 4, and 5. But before we do, let me do a recap of what's going on in Genesis. So remember, Genesis is part of you guys remember? Yeah, the Torah, Exodus, Genesis, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. I started that in a weird way. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, all 5 books. All 5 books. They were not created for historically accurate tellings of Israel. Again, when we go that direction, it gets a little weird. Numbers don't add up. Stories don't always fit together. It's not meant for a history book. Right? It was never that. Jewish people did not write history books. They wrote Torah. And so for them, they are in Babylonian captivity. They watched again and again, this phrase, you should know this. They watched as their temples destroyed. Their people marched hundreds of miles on feet, right? They get there to Babylon. And there in Babylon, all these other tribes are there. And the question is, are we going to be able to hold on to the traditions we have? Will we be able to keep the rich tradition that is Hebrew? What are the stories? What are the recipes, right, for grandma's recipes? What are the rituals that we had? Will we lose them all? Yeah. Like your kid goes off, they come back from college, they get a tattoo. Have they forgotten all the values you gave them? That's what's going on for Israel. And their response to this, of course, is they begin compiling all of that rich history. Because for them, the Torah is written as a response to the fears of assimilation. They're worried that they might become too good at being Babylonians. Yeah. So we hold on to our rich tradition. And that's essentially what Torah is. Yeah, it's the poetry, the mythology, the narratives, the prophetic musings about life. It's the rituals, how we do the rituals so we don't forget. It even has like some recipes. Yeah, as funny as that sounds. It's got prophetic warnings about if you're not careful, you could easily fall into this or this or this. All of that's there. All so that they can keep Jewish Hebrew tradition Hebrew. That's the point. And so our quote that we're going to give you over and over again until you can quote it yourself is this: Torah is a complete narrative of Israel, miniaturized through its tellings. Every story you read, every tradition, every weird ritual, all of it, it's all there to remind you of what Israel is, what it should be, what it sometimes falls prey to, but it's all the story of Israel told over and over again so that their people might remember who they are, what they value, what they love, what cycles they sometimes fall into that brings brokenness and captivity, and what things bring them out of it. That's the picture that we give over and over again. And so Genesis 1. Genesis 1. Such a beautiful beginning to the story. Because we talked about Enuma Elish last week, right? We talked about this beautiful picture, this interesting Genesis perspective. But now I want to talk about something even deeper. God hovers over the water. And when God hovers over the water, like last week we talked about, dips his wing in the water, the chaos, patterns begin to emerge, right? So after the patterns begin to emerge, watch what Israel's God does. Because again, this is really the story of Israel. Every time they're in chaos, what do? When they've chosen to do this next part, there's life. So I want to start by showing you a picture. I know you recognize this, don't you? It's not your table, it's someone's table. Because if you were to stop right now, hit pause, and you were to look at your dinner table right now, what would it look like? Are there plates all strewn all over the place? Is there homework books? Is there a bunch of stuff on the table? Because on my table, there always is. Even though my kids are in the middle of we're starting summer now. They're still doing some homework. So there's some homework books. There's a couple plates left over from lunch. Our little baby, there's always stuff all over because it's chaos. The table throughout the week, it looks nuts, doesn't it? It's just this chaotic mess. And so here's what happens in this next portion of Genesis. What you're going to see God do is become a busboy. Yeah, maybe that was too heretical to say. But yeah, their God becomes this busboy. He basically steps in and he begins moving things off the table, begins causing some separation. Yeah, putting the salt and the sugar and all those things back in place, right? But to do so, you have to clear it. You have to make some separation. You got to clean some things. And so in this next portion, what you're going to see, the next 3 or 4 studies, we're going to see Israel's God begin to separate things and clear things off to make room for the next best pattern to emerge. That's what's going to take place. And so here it is. Here we go. And God said, "Let there be light." And there was light. And God saw the light, that it was good. And God separated between the light and between the darkness. And God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And it was evening, and it was morning, one day. Yeah. So again, you can imagine these ancient people. How did we arrive at one day and 2 days and a week? This is a great retelling, right? An oral tradition of how we got days and nights. But there's also this deeper picture of Israel. And if you look at it deep enough, you'll see it. Notice this, it's talking about light and darkness. And in Hebrew tradition, light and darkness always has a metaphor. It's always a metaphor. There's always something deeply connected to it. Light, what is good? What brings life? Darkness, what is bad? What is evil? What brings chaos? But here's the cool thing about Israel. They understood that life has, it's all. It's the yin and the yang, right? It's got the good and the bad and the ugly. It's got the light and the day. But here's what Israel is learning to do all throughout their history. Israel's learning to decipher between the two, to understand that brings chaos, that brings life. I move toward the things that bring life, and there's more life. I move toward the things that bring brokenness, pain, and we end up in more brokenness. We end up actually in captivity. And so today in our culture, it's interesting. We have so much good, bad, and ugly in our culture. And it's sometimes really hard, especially as a parent. How do you decide what's good and what's bad? How do you decide what's light and what's darkness? How do we begin to separate the two in order to find what brings the most life? How do we decide? Because right now, we've got the Kardashians, we've got television, right? We've got entertainment, and the entertainment industry is just blowing up. And so with that said, with so much at our fingertips, you've got Netflix, you've got Hulu, you've got Amazon Prime, you've got Disney Plus, you've got so many options for entertainment. And the question, of course, is what is going to bring life and what's not? Because the more you partake of whatever it is, like Paul says, the more you take in the one thing, the more you become like the thing. And so what is good, what is bad in entertainment? I think it's getting harder and harder to decide, isn't it? Yeah. Think about the movements all around us. We have Black Lives Matter. We have so many different groups coming together. And the question, of course, is which movements are going to bring life? Which ones are light and which ones are not? Yeah, that's important to know, but how do we decide? How do we clear the table? How do we know, right? Politics. Diapers and politicians should be changed often, both for the same reason. I love that quote. Again, politics. How do we know what's going to bring life or what's not? How do we know which reform is really going to be a good reform and which one has so much extra pork added to it that it becomes ineffective? Those are all things right now in our culture we are learning to decipher. And I think it's so important to do so. What is good? What's bad? What is light? What's darkness? Think about history for a moment. Have you ever seen this guy before? Yeah. Christopher Columbus. Now, I'm 40 years old right now, and Christopher Columbus, when I grew up in school, he was a hero. Yeah, we had Christopher Columbus Day. And Columbus, when we talk about Columbus, we're like, what a heroic guy. He basically, we have America now because of Christopher Columbus. And we had these interesting stories and these cute fables about Christopher and then the Indians and how they got along and the first Thanksgiving and all of this. And Columbus was kind of the central figure. But today, we've studied Christopher Columbus, right? We've actually done the history and we've done the hard work, the research, and we've found Columbus. When he got back to his homeland, he was imprisoned because of the stuff he did to the Native Americans. This guy, it was horrific, some of the things he did. Columbus. Today, some people would actually say he's not a hero, he's actually a villain. And so in our culture today, the way we viewed history has kind of shifted. What we've seen as light and darkness, it kind of fluctuates the more we know and the more we study. Think about this event. Because events have changed, haven't they? We used to think of World War II as like the greatest war ever, right? But was it? Is war ever great? These are questions we're beginning to consider. Think about this. We dropped the atomic bomb. We created atomic energy. And then we found a way to drop it on people. And we did this, right? Nagasaki, Hiroshima, we dropped the atomic bomb. And for some that day, there was applause. It was a victory, the end of the war. But for these people in Hiroshima, Nagasaki, hundreds years later, 100 years later, we see the poor effects, the painful effects of what happened there. Maybe not 100. But what we see is this was a really terrible, terrible event. It caused so much pain, so much brokenness. Was it heroic? Was it villainous? Man, depending on who you talk to and what the incentive was and all of that, it shifts, doesn't it? What's light? What's dark? Even the events in history have shifted how we view it. Think about this. Different groups in our society right now. How do you know which one's bringing life and which one's not? We are made up of so many groups. Right now in America, we have 892 hate groups. Like, can you imagine that? 892 active hate groups in America, which means there are a ton of people who seem to think that can bring life. Like, that's heroic to be a part of this. We actually have in this little slide here, we have the top 8. And it's surprising how many people think this brings life. The more you delve in, the more you look, is it bringing life? Is it not? Is it light or is it dark? And so how do we decipher between good, bad, darkness, and light? How do we do it? For Israel, they have a rich tradition of learning to do so. And so here are some of the wisdom voices I'm going to share with you today. How to learn, how to become that busboy, right? To what to clear and what not to. What to remove, what to separate. How do we do this hard, difficult thing? And so Proverbs is filled with wisdom voices. So Proverbs 23:22, it says this: listen to your father who gave you life. Some of you are like, I don't like my father. Go deeper, right? This is bigger than just your dad, right? Listen to your father who gave you life, and do not despise your mother when she is old. This beautiful picture here, this wisdom proverb was saying this: listen to the voices, the wisdom voices that are around you. I know as a parent, I remember thinking, I'll never do that for my kids, right? And then you grow up and you realize, oh, I guess I kind of know now why mom and dad did the thing they did. I know now why they kind of gave me the advice they did, but back then I couldn't accept it because I knew everything. I was a teenager, right? But again, the bigger perspective here, there are so many wisdom voices around you, many familial. And if we take time to actually listen, we may not repeat the same mistakes. And we'll find a lot of beauty there, a lot of things that can bring life when we stop and listen to those wisdom voices. Another one in Proverbs 10:25-27, it says this: when the tempest passes, the wicked is no more, but the righteous is established forever. Like vinegar to the teeth and smoke to the eyes, so is the sluggard to those who send him. The fear of the Lord prolongs life, but the years of the wicked will be short. So again, for the proverb, this wisdom voice is saying, look at the actions of people. See what they're doing. If you want to know if something's light or dark, look at what kind of actions follow, right? If you want to know if this movement is going to bring something really good, watch what happens with the people and the actions after and during. You will know if it brings light or darkness. The people you follow, right? That emphasis right there is so good. Yeah, watch their actions. It'll give you a real good indicator if it's going to bring life or death. Another one, Proverbs 10:25-27. When the tempest passes, the wicked is no more, but the righteous is established forever. Again, think about this with the vinegar idea. When you see it, you can't unsee it. I love this description, like vinegar, right? Again, I kind of divided it up into two pieces because it's really two pieces of really good advice. When you have tasted something that brings death, when you've had something that's painful and it hurt you, you went down the wrong direction, you did the wrong thing, you followed the wrong path, you followed the wrong movement. When you did it, it felt like you just inhaled a bunch of vinegar. Yeah, it was gross. It was painful. It feels like a bunch of smoke just went into your eyes. That has that effect on us, doesn't it? And so when you see it, you can't unsee it. It can't be undone, but you can learn from it. And so sometimes our own experiences will be indicators of what brought life and what brought death. And then lastly, I really like this quote. This quote is by William Host. He says this: history informs us of past mistakes, from which we can learn without repeating them. I think that's so good. Without having to repeat them. It also inspires us and gives confidence and hope bred of victories already won. So again, when we look back at our stories, the histories, right? The history of our civilization, the history of our tribe, our family, when you look back at these stories, you will find over and over again interesting cycles. And when you do, you'll know what to separate. This brought us life, and this brought us death. This brought us pain, and this brought us captivity. And you can begin separating the two. You can choose what to stay on the table and what can be removed. So again, that's Genesis 1:4. It's so beautiful, right? There God steps into the chaos. When steps in, hovers over, dips the wing, and begins creating order. And the only way to create order is by taking that table and begin to clear it off. Because once it's cleared off, then you can begin placing things that bring life on. There's room for it. Yeah, that's like a beautiful, beautiful picture. Deep, deep wisdom. So, as always, we delve into take it home. How do you apply this? I want to give you some very, very applicable ideas that you can actually practice. It's not just pieces of advice, it's actually things to practice this week. So again, when I give you the slide, take a picture of it. And throughout the day, just look at that image and try to put it to practice and see what happens. Again, keeping that narrative, right, in the back of your mind, 3, 4, and 5 verses, right? So here we go. Number 1, take inventory of people, things, and organizations that are close to you. Again, what are you putting your energy into when you're not working? Or maybe it's even part of work. Ask the question, are they bringing positive or negative energy into your life? Is that thing that you're partnering with, is it bringing life? For many of you, you're partnering with us. And I would hope that this continues to bring you life, because I know for me, it definitely does. And I've heard from so many of you. But what are some other relationships you have that may actually be pulling you from the light, from good, positive things? Maybe they need to be adjusted. Think about that one. Write that down. Take an inventory. And then think about this. What movements can you begin helping that bring light to the world? Yeah. What things in the world right now can you say, yeah, that's definitely light. That has brought so much goodness. I want to keep partnering with it. For us at Ethos, we'd ask that you consider us. Consider partnering with us in ways so we can continue sharing these messages to people all over the world. So again, that's a really helpful one. How can you, what movements can you align yourself with that bring life? And then lastly, pray, meditate. However you do prayer, I think it's so important to use this beautiful ritual, right? Meditate, pray on what things in your life are bringing clutter and what things can be added. Because I think, again, once you begin removing some of the clutter, it does open space for good things. So begin really praying and meditating on that and see what happens for you. I think, honestly, you're going to begin realizing that thing doesn't need to be there, but that thing does. And then once you do that, something else will emerge. This is how life is. It's what the Hebrews said is what the chaotic, orderly life looks like. And God said, let there be light, and there was light. And God saw the light, and it was good. And God separated between the light and between the darkness. Beautiful, right? I hope you enjoyed this teaching today. I always have so much fun just delving into those couple verses. There's so much life there. And so as always, we want to remind you, please consider donating ethos-church.org/donate. Give that tax-deductible donation. It goes so far in helping us continue doing what we're doing. If you want to continue having a conversation with real live people live, please consider emailing me, tonywerfel@gmail.com, there, and I'll send you the link the first and the third of Saturday of every month. We come together online via Zoom, and we have live discussions about the Bible, about spirituality, about deconstruction, all of it. And it's so good. Consider doing that. And again, subscribe. Hit that subscribe button, but don't stop there. Hit the subscribe button, but then hit that little bell. That bell will tell you every time a new video comes up. And it'll actually put us more toward the beginning of your search result. And so hit that little bell. We'd love to continue partnering with you and share these videos any chance you can. Everyone, I love you so much. Thank you for joining us at Ethos. This is just so, so good. Next week, we're going to delve into Genesis again. So fun. Everyone take care. Can't wait to see you next week.